Hello and welcome to My Week in Baseball. I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. You're listening to Season 3, Episode 7. All episodes are available in both video and podcast format at myweekinbaseball.com or subscribe on YouTube at My Week in Baseball. First, a couple of acknowledgments. One, to Rose Petal Studios for the artwork and logos created for this show. To view more, visit rosepetalstudios.com. And second, thanks to Brunjo Productions for our intro music. Learn more at brunjo.com. Well, today we've got breaking up a double play and what exactly is interference, a quick update on Steven Kwan's quest to hit 400, your chance to be an owner of a pro ball team, the All-Star Game's starting pitchers, which may feature a pirate and a tiger, and a few stolen baseball cards. How much are yours worth? Of course, we'll also have a timely limerick, our baseball limerick, and our blast from the past along the way. So let's get right to it. We'll begin, as usual, with today's trivia question. What rookie pitcher had the highest wins above replacement in baseball history? I'll give you a hint. It was a Detroit Tiger, and it may even be an era that you remember. Next up, more on umps, calls, and rules. So earlier this year, Aaron Judge broke up a double play. He did so by sliding into second base and lifting up his left hand. Now, I'll say when I watched it at first, it looked like the kind of thing you might do simply to catch your balance. And he does have a sliding glove, or like a runner's glove, on that hand. And as he slides in, the shortstop tags second base, so clearly Judge is out, and the shortstop throws the ball to first base. But it hits Judge's hand, which is elevated in the air, blocking the throw. Now, the umpires ruled it to be incidental, and the runner on first was called safe. Now, interestingly, after the game, the umpire crew chief said they had missed the call and it actually should have been called interference. So what exactly is the interference rule? And did Judge do what was right or wrong according to that? So in my research, I found two rules that to me apply to this situation. One is MLB's definition of the fielder right-of-way. So according to the fielder right-of-way rule, fielders, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, fielders must not be hindered while attempting to field a thrown ball. So if we think about that, in this particular case, was he being hindered attempting to field a thrown ball? I think the answer to that is no. The shortstop did catch the ball and was able to tag second. So that part wasn't violated. Next part of the rule, and interference can be called if a base runner hinders a following play being made on another runner after having been put out. A following play, meaning the play that fouls. So in other words, the throw to first base was the play that fouls. So if that base runner hinders that following play, then they can be called out. They can be called out for hindering the play. So that's the fielder right-of-way rule. The first part, to me, was not broken in this particular instance because the fielder was allowed to catch the thrown ball. The second part is certainly questionable. There's one other rule, though, that falls into play here. MLB also has something called a slide rule. So this says when sliding into a base in an attempt to break up a double play, so now we're clearly talking about double play. The previous rule was not. When in an attempt to break up a double play, a runner has to make, quote unquote, a bona fide slide. That's an interesting way to say it. So what's your definition of a bona fide slide? Essentially, the base needs to be in reach. You can't be doing something crazy where you're sliding clearly out of the base path or away from the base in a way simply to interfere with a defender. You also cannot make a rolling block by kind of like leaning and rolling over, which might catch with your shoulder, might catch a player's legs. And you also cannot attempt to initiate contact with the fielder by kicking your leg above the fielder's knee. Now, we used to see that all the time, and that, of course, used to be legal. You also cannot initiate contact by throwing your arm, your upper body, or by grabbing the fielder. And then, quote, the offending runner and the batter will be called out. So what they're saying in that case is if you are clearly interfering, you're out and the batter's out. So that's a lot more clear. It didn't used to be that way in the past, even as recently as a few years ago. These rules, I think, were changed in the 2010s. But prior to that, you could do almost anything at second base. So as you saw in earlier days, there was a lot of that. And we also the umpires allowed for what was then known as the phantom tag, where a defender, second base or shortstop, could be near second base, might not actually touch second base with their foot to record the out, but they were called out anyway. I think part of that was because runners were allowed to do most anything. So now both sides of that are much more clarified. You do have to touch the bag to make the out as a defender, but the fielder cannot interfere. So think about those things you can't do as a runner. You can't hinder a following play, and you cannot attempt to initiate contact. Now, this does say, this is interesting, as I read it out loud again, you may not attempt to initiate contact with the fielder by kicking your leg, throwing your arm, your upper body, rolling, and so on. So the interesting thing is, prior to this broadcast and before my second reading of it, I was thinking, yeah, Judge is clearly out, because he does put his hand up. And if you watch this replay, it's actually back in April that this happened. Could he be simply catching his balance? It's possible. He may not be doing it intentionally, but he's a very tall guy, and he does raise his arm quite a bit, and the ball is thrown right into his hand, right into the glove he's wearing, and that prevents the play from happening at first base. So my initial reading of this, I'd like, yeah, he's out because he's hindering a following play. So you could call him out for that. I think if you're calling him out because of fielder right-of-way, and that is the rule that prevents a base runner from hindering a following play. But I think if you look at the slide rule, I think he was all right, because here it says you cannot initiate contact with the fielder by doing all these things. Well, he didn't. He did not initiate contact with the fielder. He does go right for the base. He initiates contact with the ball. So it doesn't say you can't block the ball. It actually does not say that, but under the slide rule. But under the right-of-way rule, it does say you cannot hinder a following play. So I would say that, to me, the umpires really could have called it either way, because you could say that it was incidental, and that is how the play was ruled during the game, and he was called, Judge was out at second, but the runner at first was out. I think it also would be fair to have said that he hindered the following play, and because of that, you could call the runner out. But it is definitely a gray area, that fielder right-of-way and that slide rule. It doesn't specifically mention blocking the ball. It mentions interfering with the fielder. So kind of interesting one there. I think you could take it either way. If you're a Yankees fan, you probably like the call. If you're not, maybe not so sure. But I'm kind of glad it went with the human judgment in that case, and I think it's reasonable that the umps could have called it either way. So be interested to hear your take on that. You can leave your notes in the comment. Next up, Steven Kwan. So in a previous episode, I did talk about the Cleveland Guardians left fielder, Steven Kwan. He will be going to the All-Star game for the first time this year. He's actually a starting outfielder along with two Yankees, one we just mentioned, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, the three of them. That's along with Steven Kwan from the Guardians. So the last time we talked, Steven Kwan was really close to 400. He was on the path. He was hitting 398 and could be headed toward that elusive 400 year. Well, now, as we are just a few days away from the All-Star break, Kwan has dropped to 359, so quite a ways from 400, but he does still lead all of Major League Baseball. In fact, he has more than a 30-point lead over the next closest batter, Bobby Witt Jr. of the Kansas City Royals, also a terrific player. So Kwan is having a great season. Last year, by comparison, Luis Reyes, who I've talked about in that season, also had a quest early in the year to hit 400, and he ended up hitting 354. So right now, Kwan's hitting 359, so comparable. Last year's winner in the 350s, this year's leader currently in the 350s. The other thing I think it's interesting to compare to, and a question that in my mind comes up from time to time, what really is the average batting average in the major leagues? You know, you think about how people compare to that. What do you think it is? Do you think it's 250? And what would be your guess? The actual number this season, so far leading up just to the All-Star break, 243. 243 is the average batting average in Major League Baseball. So really, if you're hitting 250, you're an above average hitter for batting average. And if you're hitting, like 238 or something like that, you're really not that far off, even though I know that doesn't sound good. Last year, it was slightly higher, 5 points higher. It was 248 on the year last year. And last year was the beginning of all those rule changes that I think generally favored the hitter by getting rid of the shift and by making the bases slightly bigger. So I'm actually a little surprised that it's gone back down again. But we'll see how it is at the end of the year. Anyway, 243 is the current average for major leaguers, and Steven Kwan still leads the league right now, hitting 359. Next up, would you like to buy a share of a professional baseball team? Well, guess what? I've talked a lot about Oakland, and I have to talk about Oakland again, but it is not the Oakland A's. It is the Oakland Bees, who I've mentioned before. They are the Oakland Ballers, and they were started at least in part as a response to Oakland planning to leave the Bay Area. They're playing this season at least in historic Raymond Field. And the next season, they might play a game or more in the Coliseum. In fact, this year, as you may recall from a previous broadcast, the Ballers, the Oakland Bees, were scheduled to play a game in the Coliseum. And then the A's said, yeah, we're not going to allow that, because this year the A's do still have the lease. Next year they won't. They won't have a say. So I think it's quite likely that the Ballers will play at least one game, maybe a few more, in the old Coliseum. But here's the interesting thing. They are selling shares in the team. This is the first time in the U.S. at least that a professional baseball team has been put up at least for partial fan ownership. Now, in other countries and other sports, I think in soccer, sometimes this can happen. But this is a pretty new thing, and it's really pretty interesting. So let me give you a little bit of the background on that. If you want to learn more, I'm going to say it right now, you can visit invest.oaklandballers, BALLERS.com, invest.oaklandballers.com. But previously, there was an Oakland area soccer club that did a crowdfunding effort, and according to this article, they raised nearly $2 million in the past. So I am going to give credit to this to the Athletic, the baseball publication, The Athletic, and the writer Melissa Lockhart, who wrote this just recently here in July of 2024. But it's great information. And supposedly in coming weeks, you're going to know more about what you can do. The owners, current owners of the Oakland Bees, have said that they want to do more than simply sell you a share. They actually want to give you some degree of voting rights and what happens to the team, which is quite interesting. That would be a different approach. Oftentimes, small minority shares, at least in other sports and other countries, might be sold to fans, but you don't typically get to vote on things, right? There's still a majority owner, and the majority owner is calling the shots. So this would be really an interesting model. This is a model that Oakland Ballers co-founder Paul Friedman says he hopes will become available to other teams. And one of the other co-founders, Brian Carmel, is also quoted as saying, fans will have real skin in the game and not just the economic upside. So I think that's pretty cool. That's really pretty cool. The Oakland Ballers have also been averaging over 1,700 fans in their home games so far this season, which this is in the Pioneer League. And I think I talked about this before. It's not clearly defined what level they're at, but it's to me, it sounds more like an A league and a lower level major league. But really neat that they're doing this. And if you are interested, maybe you're from the Bay Area, maybe you've got a few extra bucks lying around and you've always wanted to own part of a professional ball team, I've got to say it's kind of tempting to me. I am going to wait to find out more about what the requirements are. Do I have to invest some very large amount of money, or will they allow kind of more average fans to buy very small portions of the team? But anyway, I think it's a great idea that they're doing this, and if you're looking to get into ownership, now is your chance. Next up, the All-Star Game for 2024, and the starting pitchers, which may feature a Pirate, who has actually been announced as the starter already, and possibly versus a Tiger. Now, the American League, to my knowledge, has not yet announced who the starting pitcher will be, so we'll see about that. But in the National League, and I've talked about him before, if you don't know the name yet of Paul Skenes, you're going to need to know the name of Paul Skenes. He is just 22 years old, and he now has a 6-win, 0-loss record and an ERA of 1.90. And he will be the first rookie to start an All-Star game since 1995, which was Hideo Nomo, and prior to that, it was 1981, Fernando Valenzuela. Has been done a couple of other times before, in the 70s, and once in the 70s and once in the 60s. And you'll ask as I talk through this, is he the best rookie pitcher of all time? I'm going to answer that right now and say, well, no, because that person is actually going to be the answer to today's trivia question, which we will get to. But Paul Skenes is absolutely outstanding. If you've happened to pick him up in your fantasy league, you are doing very well. So in his last outing, which was July 11, 2024, he went 7 innings, no hits, a single walk, and 11 strikeouts. 11 strikeouts. He threw 99 pitches, and at that point, he was removed from the game after completing 7 innings in a game that the Pirates went on to win over Milwaukee 1-0. Now, I know you might be thinking, what are they doing? Taking him out, 99 pitches. Couldn't he throw a little bit more? Probably, but he's also young. This is his first season in the majors. He has not thrown a lot of innings, and I think they want to preserve him now. I don't know if the Pirates really think they would have a playoff run. I think that seems pretty unlikely right now, but they also don't want him getting hurt, right? So could you leave him in an 8th inning? Maybe. I think the question might be, could you leave him in both an 8th and a 9th inning? And that starts to seem unlikely. He would have to get some really, really quick outs. And I think they also want him to leave with this wonderful start to show for and to help build his confidence. Maybe he doesn't even need that. I don't know. But certainly better than sending him out for another inning and now he's kind of lost an inning and he gets knocked around and he loses 2-1 or something silly. I don't know. Anyway, it's very common practice now that a pitcher may have a no-hitter going in the late innings and he is not allowed to finish the game. So a little disappointing in that regard, but I get it. His prior outing, just a few days before that, he pitched 7 innings, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts against the New York Mets. So he's really terrific, and we'll just briefly describe some of his stats for the year. He's holding opponents to a batting average of .202. 202. And I just stated the league average, MLB average, is 243. So he's, a good 40 points below that in what he's holding people to. On base against him, 251. I mean, that is so low. Slugging against him, 319. I mean, this is like nothing. So on base plus slugging, 570. League average this year is probably, I'd have to look that up, it's probably around 700, or usually OPS is slightly over 700, but 570, I mean, you're probably 100, 130, 140, maybe even 150 points below league average. You're way down. So not only does he rarely give up a hit, he rarely gives up hits that are for power. And batting average against him on balls in play is 287. I'm not actually sure how that compares to league average, but I'm thinking league average is more in the low 300s. So, he's doing terrific. A 35% strikeout rate, a 5% walk rate, and he hardly ever walks anybody. So and he's getting paid the major league minimum this year, which is $740,000. I mean, okay, sounds like a pretty reasonable amount of money, but still, right, compared to what we're paying some other guys who used to be good. Anyway, so I already mentioned he's 6-0, 1.90 earned run average. His WHIP, walks and hits per inning pitched, 0.92, so well below 1. His ERA is more than double better than the league average. He has a 215 ERA plus, with the average ERA being 100. So this means that Paul Skenes is 115% better, more than twice as good as the average earned run average. And he's striking out 12 per 9, walking less than 2. So his strikeout to walk rate is almost 7. It's like 6 point. Well, if I run it off, it's 6.9. So anyway, Paul Skenes is terrific, and if he's the only reason you tune into the All-Star game, I think he'll be worth it. However, the Tigers may have the starting pitcher in the American League, and even if they don't, one of the terrific stories this year in the American League is the Tigers' Tarik Skubal. He's been fantastic, and I will just say, from The Athletic, from writer Cody Stavenhagen, who mentioned this back on July 8th, that since the beginning of July, Skubal has been statistically the best starting pitcher in all of baseball. And that's according to Stavenhagen. And so I looked up a few things, and he has pitched again, of course, since that was first written, but the stats are terrific. So Skubal leads the game in wins above replacement. He also leads in WHIP, walks and hits per innings pitched, at 0.88, better than Skenes. Both those things better than Skenes. And he has the second lowest ERA in the majors, the second lowest at 2.41. And he's really one of Detroit's few truly good players. I really count him on the pitching side. He's outstanding, the best starting pitcher we've had since Verlander. And then the other top Tiger, really on the player position side, is going to be outfielder Riley Green, who also is in the All-Star game. Riley Green is also super, really probably Detroit's only feared hitter, even though there's some other guys who are okay. I think he's the only actually feared hitter. So Skubal versus Skenes would be a terrific game. I would love to see that. There would be two young starters, and that leads me in to today's Blimerick. Our baseball limerick is a tribute to Paul Skenes and Tarik Skubal. So here we go. Skubal versus Skenes, two young all-star dreams. With a strikeout or two, run scoring looks blue. AL and NL, their pitching, it gleams. And next up, the answer to today's trivia question, which also will turn out to be our blast from the past. So the trivia question, as you might recall, was what rookie pitcher had the highest WAR, the highest wins above replacement in baseball history? And hint, it was a Detroit Tiger, and it may be an era you remember, at least an era that I remember. So the highest WAR, according to Baseball Reference, was Mark the Bird Fydrich. And this happened in 1976 when his wins above replacement, 9.6. 9.6 wins better than whatever replacement level pitcher would have been in that year. He was terrific. He won the Rookie of the Year. He had 19 wins and only 9 losses, 19-9, at an era when your record mattered more. And he had 24 complete games. I mean, you don't see that. If somebody, I think, had 4 complete games now, that would be really amazing. 24 complete games, 250 innings pitched as a rookie at age 21. Now, maybe that's part of the reason he ends up getting hurt and he has a very short career. But he was terrific that year, the highest WAR ever by a rookie pitcher in history, Mark the Bird Fydrich. Paul Skenes, by the way, has a WAR of 3.1. Last I checked, what did I say Skubal's was? I said Skubal was the leader. Interesting. Yeah, Skubal is the leader at 4.5 WAR for this year so far. And we're looking at Paul Skenes is at 3.2, but there are quite a few pitchers in between. Now, not rookies, but Seth Lugo is really close at 4.4. And there's some other pitchers there between the two of them, but certainly terrific pitching by both of those guys. So Mark Fydrich, who answers today's question, I think I've discussed most of the things that you'll remember about him. That ERA 2.34, the 19 wins, 250 innings. I mean, it's amazing. Now, he didn't strike out a lot of guys, and that really, I think, is more about the era and how pitching happened back then. There were, of course, a few guys, but it wasn't the norm to strike out at least a batter an inning like it is now. And the really good players, like what I say, Skenes was striking out like 12 an inning, something like that. So his strikeout to walk ratio in 1976, this is Mark Fydrich, it was only a little under 2-1, which isn't terrific. 3.5 strikeouts per 9, 1.9 walks per 9. So the walks still are really, really low. And he was an all-star. He came in second for the Cy Young Award that year, 11th in MVP voting, and first in Rookie of the Year. You're probably going to ask, well, who won the Cy Young Award in 1976? Let's see if I can tell you that. The Cy Young Award in 1976 in the American League was Jim Palmer, who was 22-13. And a 2.51 ERA, so his ERA not quite as good as Fydrich's 2.34. But Jim Palmer pitched over 300 innings. So anyway, I'm getting a little bit away from our blast from the past. But Fydrich had a terrific rookie season. He was quite good, really, the next 2 years in very limited roles. So in 1977, he only pitched in 11 games. He was 6-4, 2.89 ERA, 1.16 WHIP, also very, very good. And even the following season, he only pitched in 3 games, though. He's 2-0. 2.45 ERA. He still he still was great at run prevention, but he just, I think his arm couldn't take it. I'm not sure what would have happened, and this would take some research. Maybe one of you out there knows the answer. But I know Fydrich got hurt. I don't know if it was the kind of injury to like the UCL or something right now that could you fix it with Tommy John. But I'm just thinking, that's kind of more the era when that would have begun, because Tommy John was pitching around that time, who the surgery is named after, right? So sometime in that era. So it would have been relatively new if it had happened. But that would be interesting to know is what, under today's circumstances, would that have even happened? How good could he have been? But in some ways, it's so terrific that he had one brilliant season that really stood out that way. I think that's probably better than, I don't know. Is it better than playing 5 or 10 years and being more ordinary? You're going to certainly be remembered more for having the really good year. So Mark Fydrich with the curly hair, of course, he looked like Big Bird, and that's how he got his name, the Bird. And the clever things of talking to the ball, the kind of little silly things that he did on the mound, which really made him fun and unique and he brought a lot of fans to the stands. So anyway, that is our blast from the past, Mark Fydrich. And then our last item, how much are your baseball cards worth? Or put another way, if they were stolen, would they be worth $2 million? Ha! Well, that's what happened recently at a baseball card show. I kid you not. So I'm getting this from an article also from The Athletic. This is by Mark Fydrich. But it's an article about these incredible rare baseball cards that go missing that are apparently stored, if I read this correctly, in a briefcase. So someone comes to the convention. I can see you've got to take these things around. And he has got a number of top-notch Mickey Mantle cards. There's one shown in a picture here, 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card. And it is in the plastic casing, and it's graded by PSA, one of the big grading companies. And it's worth a lot of money. So I'm going to go through this a little bit and just give you some of the details. But there were a group of people involved in the heist, and from what I understand, the person running the booth, one of the people involved distracts him with a conversation or something, and then another person runs up behind and grabs the case that's full of these valuable cards. And they have had their eyes on this for quite a while. In fact, the person who grabs the cards actually pretended earlier in the day to be working at the convention center, stacking chairs near this card seller. So they've been keeping an eye on him the whole time. It really seems kind of brazen. And anyway, so let's talk about some of the cards in the collection. There were 6 of these 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle cards. There were also 2 1948 Jackie Robinson rookie cards. The most valuable card on the Mickey Mantle side, anyway, was selling for $175,000 for a single baseball card. Do you have a 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle in your collection? Because if you do, even if it's not in great shape, it may not be worth that much, but you might want to consider selling it. Or if you want to keep it, that's great, because I really think you should display it somewhere, because that's pretty cool. Anyway, I'd say that the bad news about it is this blatant stealing at a card show. The good news about it is these cards were all graded, were all cased. They're very valuable, and each of the top grading companies says that they have on file a scan record of the original card. So what that means is, and what a thief might do, because if you think about it as a thief, well, are you going to be able to sell this graded card in the box? I mean, maybe somebody would buy it. But if you're selling it certainly to like another dealer, they're going to be able to look it up. It's got like a scan code on it, and they're going to find out right away it's already been marked by the card companies as stolen merchandise. They're going to know right away. Now, maybe you can sell it to somebody who doesn't care, but it seems like you're going to get pennies on the dollar. The other thing you might do, you might crack the case open and very carefully take that baseball card, resubmit it to another grading company, get it graded again, and try to resell it. The thing is, because each of these cards has a scan on file, because they're so rare and so valuable, card companies know if they get a 52 Mantle card, they're going to go, this is one of those cards that was stolen. Let's check the records against the scan file, because if you have a really detailed high-resolution scan and you are good at doing what you do, like the grading companies are, you're going to be able to tell if it's the same card. So I don't know how the bad guys, in this case, the thieves, think they're going to get away with this. It seems to me they have to sell it to somebody who doesn't know anything about the cards, or break the case and sell the card not graded and then let the buyer beware. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's going to work out in the long run, but it is an amazing thing. And just to think about the value and to think that this could happen at a card show. So, in fact, the card shop owner who had this merchandise stolen is offering a $70,000 reward just to get information leading to the return of his case with the stolen cards. So some amazing things. There were also some Willie Mays cards, Hannes Wagner cards, and according to him, a 10 rated. 10 is a gem mint condition. It means perfect condition. Tom Seaver rookie card. And that Tom Seaver rookie card was priced at $90,000. So not as valuable as the Mantle card, but still, wow. Whew, $90,000. So I hope that the cards in your collection are either worth something and you can get some money from them, or I hope that you really enjoy having them and displaying them. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting thing to learn about, and I hope you did too. So that's all for today, my friends. Please join us next time, because honestly, what can be better than talking baseball? As always, I'm your host, Phil S. Harrison. We'll see you next time on My Week in Baseball.